Okay, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, we are here for a second time, actually, a husband and a wife on the show. Uh, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have them both on. I was actually, before we started recording, I was just telling them I'm hoping that they were both going to be on because the show has been from day one all about teamwork, all about navigating the the tumultuous, crazy entrepreneur journey and figuring out how you're going to manage your personal and your professional life. So all that being said, Dr. Todd and Kim Saxton, welcome to the show. How are you?
We are well, thank you, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks, Aswan, for asking us. I mean, we don't get asked how we are as a team very often, so that's kind of a fun topic.
Well, you are on the show. You are on the number one show of innovative teamwork. So, it's right in line. And the thing is about you guys, and like I said, I was been listening to you guys a lot today because as a business owner and as people that are navigating this world, whether it's college, currently you guys teach is it the University of Buffalo at Buffalo now? And
It's University of Buffalo. That's a SUNY. It's the flagship SUNY, and so we're so excited to be here at this point in our careers.
Yeah, now I actually graduated from Stony Brook University, so
Nice.
I know that area. But you guys didn't start off in academia. You guys actually met. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, and you
Oh,
guys
wow.
met
Holy cow.
actually in DC, where you were consulting a lot. And I'd love to. I'll give you the microphone for a second because I want to hear a little bit about how you're able to take that kind of that starting point where you're learning business. In my opinion, the best place to learn business. I might be a little bit biased, but knowing the way politics work and being in that area, learning how certain things are, to me, that's the best place to learn about business. So how are you able to turn that into something where you're now teaching business to young college students that are hungry and figuring out the landscape? So, talk a little bit about how you guys met and, how you got started, and we'll go from there.
So I'll jump in. We were so lucky that we got hired into the consulting firm that we got hired into because what our jobs really entailed was figuring out an industry. So a client would come to us and say, "Hey, I think I want to get into this industry. How does it work?" And we would talk to people and find out what are the trends, who are the players, what's going on, what are the future prospects.
Mhm.
And then we would start asking some of them if they would like to be acquired as we were trying to set up these acquisitions for our clients. So it
Hmm.
was pretty cool in that day everything was on the phone, maybe a fax. And so we had these big books where you would look things up and you'd go to
Mhm.
conferences and try and sort all this stuff out. And so that has actually given us a window on business
Mhm.
broadly across all of our experiences. We tend to teach classes where students are engaged with actual businesses,
Right.
solving real problems. We bring a lot of hands-on learning into the classroom, and that comes because, in my first year in that company, I looked at printed circuit laminates,
Mhm.
hazardous solvent recycling, super premium ice creams, and
Mhm.
then hospital supply distribution. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
how wilder does that get?
Yeah, that's a lot of different a lot of different avatars and a lot of different needs for a lot of different companies. And I'm glad you gave some context to it because, like you said, this was before digital, before
Right.
actually being able to have. I'm in Florida, you guys are in New York. Actually being able to have this type of interaction to where I mean, first time talking, and it's almost like we've known each other for years. But when it comes to doing your research back then, how were you able to, I guess, gauge what your client actually needed when you said you went out and you met people and you figured out? Because one of the things that I've learned nowadays is there's a lot of people who try to start businesses but they never figure out what their customer actually wants. They go put up a logo, they make a website, they write a book, and it's because they want to give people something, but it was before they actually figured out what your customer going to actually want and then offer the service. So how was it during those times before we had all this digital stuff that kind of can be a detriment? It can help, but it can be a detriment if you don't know where to actually research.
So interesting that you raise that because I think one of the first lessons that we learned was what the clients came to ask us to do
Mm-hmm.
was almost never what they really needed.
Wow.
So it wasn't just that and these were Fortune 500 and similar international firms, you
Huh.
know, savvy, well-paid executives, et cetera.
Yeah.
And when they would talk about either alliance prospects, acquisition prospects, or
Mhm.
market research and competitive positioning, um, they were often asking the wrong questions. But we learned that it's bad to sit in front of a client and say, "Well, you're stupid. That's a bad question." You're not supposed to do that.
You can say it in your mind.
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
let it come out of your mouth, right?
So part of what we learned then was not only like asking the market the right questions and
Mhm.
customers and not framing it in terms of a solution, but
Right.
trying to better understand their language and then being able to frame the question from their perspective.
Mhm.
But even for our clients was to subtly nudge them toward asking the right question without being too heavy-handed about it.
Right.
Um, and that's an interesting, you know, game to play, and I'm sure you see that with a lot of the folks that you work with as well.
Right.
Uh,
But to your point, one of the things it taught us is that, and I think this is still true, for
Mhm.
most people in their average day, no one talks to them about things that
yeah,
they're interested in. No one asks, "Hey, what is your expertise? What's your knowledge? What are you doing?" You know,
Mhm.
and so we still do a lot of customer discovery work, and it's really based on the same principles that we used before, which is just find a person and engage with them and
Right.
ask them what their day is all about. And then you're going to do it in a way that you have a conversation, but you're really aimed at getting
Mhm.
at the what's really hot to them. I mean,
Mhm.
we have learned over time how to deliver the bad news.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we did a customer discovery project.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that when you're talking business and entrepreneurship. It's gonna happen. And for you listeners out there, if you are wherever you are in your business journey, just know there're gonna be some rough, horrible days. Then they're coming. If you can get up on those days, that it's for you. So I'm glad you brought that up as well. It's not for everybody. So
Yeah, but we were working on a customer discovery and the client was like so excited about this new product they wanted to bring to market and there was nothing, da da da. And we started talking to the buyers and it was like, well, actually we have something sort of related to that and we don't use it for these following reasons. And the
Mhm.
real problem over here is this problem. And the questions you should be asking us are this other question.
Yeah.
And we went back to the client and we said, like, where did you get this idea from? You know, and
Mhm.
how about if we tell you these kinds of things? What does that make you think?
Right.
And he ended up doing a complete pivot and found another direction into the same market, but that really solved the real problem, which
Exactly.
was, no one else was focused on because it was more expensive and
Mhm.
slower. But sometimes more expensive and slower is a better move.
Exactly. Sometimes buying cheap is becomes more expensive over time
right.
because you have to actually keep replacing things and replacing things and replacing things. And with all that, what was it that actually pulled you guys to go work in the college system? Because I know you mentioned you guys were angel investors and you're getting all this knowledge and you're learning a lot. Why go to the school system? Did you guys get an MBA? What was the process like of running your own consulting firm or building your own business to now, all right, I'm gonna go teach at this school together. I mean, it's been like decades since you guys been teaching college students and college students about how to
Yeah.
do things and stuff like that.
28 years, 21 years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's why I
it's
was,
been
I
a
was like,
while.
thanks for this, man. This and then I mean you can grow. Was there like you guys didn't get your MBA or anything like that? Or was it just like how
I
did
have my MBA,
you
but
have your MBA?
She got it on the way through along with getting the
PhD.
PhD.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so and it was an interesting part of our personal journey because we had our first child. We were in Reading, Pennsylvania, doing work at a consulting firm there and starting our family. And as you probably know in the consulting business, like the higher up you move, you're running a team, and then it's like you're doing all selling, and then you're on the road either selling or presenting the final product to clients. What we both loved about that business, and I think Kim started off with this, is like disentangling the problem, finding the right questions first, talking to people, establishing rapport with them, getting the answers, and kind of saying, wait a minute, here's what the Rubik's Cube is supposed to look like.
Right.
And that's the part that we loved. But the more time we spent in consulting, the less we were doing that, the more we were selling. and doing the final pitch or presentation. So we had our first child, and kind of like, if and when we grow up, is this what we really want to be doing, is spending more time on the road?
Right.
As it turns out, Kim's mom was a college professor for years, bilingual education in Florida. And my dad was a psychology professor in New Jersey. My mom was in secondary education. And what we really loved, the problem solving, but then also kind of learning along with and teaching our clients how to think differently about their business, and kind of hit us. We could be asking these same questions, but as researchers at a university,
Yeah.
and we're really, it's funny, the first time I kind of sat back and asked that question. We're selling these acquisition services to our clients. Is there any research that suggests that the methodology we're using improves the odds of success? You probably know acquisitions are very, 70% fail.
Right.
So we're selling, if you do a strategic search and you do it systematically, you're going to find better, prospects and things that are not, quote, on the market. No research behind that whatsoever. It was like,
Wow.
as a professor, that one of the things you have the luxury of doing is digging into these deep, thorny problems and trying to disentangle them, and then sharing that learning in multiple ways, directly to your students, certainly, but through any articles that you're able to publish and through presentations to folks, through podcasts like this. And when I know you talk a lot about, like, make sure you love what you do and you're passionate about it.
Exactly.
But I won't speak for Kim, but what at least I feel I'm passionate about is not being the one who comes up with a product, but enabling innovators in whatever context they're in to be better at what they're doing. And that's what gives me joy and meaning. So I don't need to be the entrepreneur, but if I can invest in, support, help educate that entrepreneur to be more likely, there are no guarantees of success, as you know, but if you can improve the odds, that's a good thing. And we have the pleasure to be able to do that with a variety of types of students, if you will. So,
and I'll tell you his first dissertation was around alliance and joint venture success, and then his next big paper he wrote was this idea that once somebody in an industry, somebody makes an acquisition, everybody wants to. It starts a wave, and so should you join the wave? Is it better to be early in the wave, later in the wave?
Right.
And he published that paper, and it has been, there are 100 papers that have come off of that paper by other people. So that was pretty hard hitting and impactful. So instead of just affecting a client, you're affecting, researchers and business professionals all over the world. And now we're working on a paper about, with some data about, well, if you invest in startups, should you be early in the wave or later in the wave? Theoretically, the returns will be greater if you're earlier in the wave, unless, the whole thing does, right? Too early.
The thing is, I'm glad you guys are talking like this, because I have to quote, and I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but I'm going to quote him anyways. Kanye West once said, "The concept of school seems so secure." And you guys, as like people who weren't in academia, but you use the school system, and the school system is not using you. Now, I've been someone that has been to 3 different college. My first 3 years of college, I was on 3 different campuses. I was at a liberal arts college my freshman year, community college, and then a big public university. And that pull was like, I feel like I'm doing the right thing just because it's college. But there was also that feeling of being used by the system because there's so many options. And you guys actually are teaching to more so use the resources that college has to do your own research, to create your own publications, to put your own stuff out there. And that to me is so very important, because a lot of parents, a lot of people are wasting a lot of money just sending people off to college, not really knowing what to do, but having, when you take your approach where you're losing school as a way of doing your own thing, then it becomes beneficial to you. And I cannot stress how important that actually is.
Well, I think some people will be surprised that faculty have to be fairly entrepreneurial. Like, you have a job, right? You get told to go teach classes, and then you're told, do some research. And if you do enough research, we'll keep you on. If you don't do enough research, we're going to let you go. And you're like, well, wait, I got a blank piece of paper. Like, where's the money to pay for the research? And how do I come with the ideas? And then how do I turn this? It's actually a pretty rough process. And quite a lot of people don't make it. Something like 3 to 5% of papers that are submitted to a journal get published.
You just taught me something. I had no idea that's how the system works.
That's how the system
Really,
works.
really, because I have a sports background. Anything college wise, I'm really kind of just looking football and NCAA. So I'm really dialed into that. But when it comes to that side, I see like a Coach K or a Coach Primetime. They have classes. Again, they have classes that are in business schools, and there's such a crossover in terms of, okay, I'm teaching this in the sports end, but now the school is gonna make it so my publication, or I have a class that the kids can teach and all that kind of stuff. So I bring all that. I'm bringing all this up for a reason, because as I was getting ready for this interview, I was thinking back to my first time seeing Titanic when I was a kid, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wow. All right. And you know, yeah, my dad, he has run his own business since before I was in high school. And I remember watching that with him, and he goes, Ozzy, it's a love story. But as I got older and I thought about it, the iceberg hitting it, they saw it, they couldn't move it. And then the way you guys take that concept and turn it into actual business frameworks and teaching people how to build that. I thought that was an absolutely incredible way of teaching business through the Titanic. So can you walk us through that process? By the way, for the book, the title of the book is The Titanic Effect. And it's written by both of you all. And it talks about the icebergs, quote unquote, about how you're going to run into these things in business and what's going to be kind of the pitfalls, what are the things you're going to dodge, what are the things you can't avoid, all that stuff. So I'll let you guys kind of talk us through a little bit about the process of that book and how it has helped people and all that stuff.
Sure. And this could be a 45-minute story, but
Oh yes.
I'll try to
We
make it
don't, well, we
a
don't have time
2-minute
limits
version.
on this, so take all the time you need, man.
So, and I want to raise also that we do have a third author named Michael Cloran, and he's a serial tech entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And we were kind of in overlapping circles in the venture community as investors, technologists, professors, et cetera. And he was doing talks at that time on technical debt, which it wasn't new to people's terms, but it was still relatively young, and probably 2008 to 10 timeframe.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you know the notion of technical debt. We actually talked about it earlier. You make investments or bets early in
Yeah.
your tech platform that end up really holding you back later on, and you're
Right.
saddled with these decisions. So you either have to choose, do I continually upgrade this and never have it quite right? Or do I scrap it and rebuild? What's the right timing to do that?
Mhm.
But as he was kind of delivering this education on technical debt, we're looking at each other going, the founders make the same mistakes on other dimensions, like the people who are part of their team, right? That's a big part of your theme.
Right.
Who's on your team? And if you choose the wrong people, or you
Mhm.
put someone and designate them as a starter and then they suck, like that's a problem for an entrepreneur. So
Exactly.
there are these sources of human debt that occur. And then Kim, in her area of expertise in marketing, you make a lot of decisions about branding and how you communicate your value proposition
Mhm.
to your customers. And then everybody pivots, right? You change in a
Yes.
new direction. Holy cow, we spent a year investing in a brand and a value proposition that we're
Mhm.
no longer delivering on. How do we change? So
Right.
that's also debt that you're digging out from.
Mhm.
So we approached Michael, and we gave a joint presentation at a big angel investor conference about this notion of hidden debts, and we were talking about framing it. And I said, hidden debts, I'm kind of like that. Hey, spitball ideas and let's riff off each other. And you talk about an innovative team, right? You also need somebody that
Huh.
actually knows what the heck they're doing and is willing to do the hard work to get there. And that's Kim.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is like an iceberg, right? Because
Right.
80% of it is under the surface. You don't really see the effect of those decisions. When we think
Mhm.
about icebergs, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's the Titanic, right? For many of us, at least,
Right.
and it's culturally limited a little bit. And Kim's like, okay, hold on. We can't just call this the Titanic effect without doing some research and figure it out, if it makes sense. So
Right.
she starts doing this work, and I remember I'm sitting in a different part of the house, and she's using terms like that I can't repeat on your podcast. So like, you son of a gun, you are
Right.
so lucky. She
Right.
started
Right.
researching the company, the White Star Line, and the history
Uh-huh.
of the Titanic, and she's like, it maps exactly to all these concepts that we've been talking about.
Huh.
Included a big investor came in and made them change shipyards
Yeah.
to a new shipyard that wasn't able to really deliver, obviously.
All right.
But even more importantly,
Yeah.
change the product.
Yeah,
They
they
were
changed
trying
it.
to build the fastest ship, and he's like, "Oh no, no, no! Let's go big. Let's go luxury." I mean, your whole system is set up for speed, innovating engines, and now you're gonna like lay it back and make it an ornate, kind
Right.
of thing, which required, a two-story dining room, which
Mhm.
required lowering the bulkheads. The
Mm.
bulkheads that kept the water from spreading between the compartments that kept it afloat,
Right.
right? Or, oh, if we're gonna have these luxurious suites, we want to have a beautiful view. Let's get rid of half the lifeboats.
Wow. So I'm curious now. When you use the term hidden debt, that strikes a lot of chords nowadays. All right, and I'm bringing that up because the book is it's like a lot of great books out there. It's evergreen, and you could read it now with the technology that we have now, and all of the people that are promising you this. Hey, I'm gonna do this, try a 30-day trial, and then you're gonna get charged this and all that. When you're talking about hidden debts, how do you how do you teach, especially your students now, how do you teach them to be aware of these hidden debts that they're being bombarded with literally I mean, I was in college 10 years ago, but I can only imagine now they're probably getting hit with all sorts of things, being that they're kind of exposed everywhere. I mean, if it was, as long as you have a damn Instagram account, there's people that can get to you and
Right.
figure out how to put you on this thing where now you're getting charged for something you had no idea you were getting charged for.
Yeah, and I don't know that we expressly tackle those kinds of hidden
Mhm.
debts. I mean, we do a lot in our writing. Like we had a column in the Business Journal, and like to help people kind of navigate sort of the intricacies and crazinesses of the modern issues.
Mhm.
Um, but what we do with the hidden debts and we sort of focus on are in entrepreneurship and starting businesses. So in entrepreneurship classes, we go over those kinds of things that on the face of them look really great, and then you realize later are really bad ideas. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I had someone come to me and she's really excited, going to start a new company, and she had the money, and there were three of them that were going to come in together. And so she was going to hold on to 40% of the equity and give away 30% to each of them. And wouldn't that be great? Because she had the majority. And I was like, girl, you gave away 60% of your business. They
Hmm.
can put you out. And she's like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? I'm like, well, they have 60%, you have 40%,
Right, you just gave it
You have
away.
the biggest stake, but you don't have a majority.
You don't have the majority. Right.
Never start a business and don't hold on to the majority.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
And
let me go
yeah,
ahead.
but no,
I,
no,
I just,
I'm glad you took it there because I was gonna ask specifically, I was gonna kind of transition to the students now when it comes to the way they come, what the issues that they're coming with right now. Because again, I was in college 10 years ago and I was in different schools, and I started out initially wanting to major in business, but because of football, I could only take business classes here and there. And what I would pick up from the professors is everything is business. Every little thing you do, there's not going to be anything you do in this world that doesn't have some business related to it. So when it comes to how you're serving your students every day, can you just kind of speak a little bit about the challenges that they may be having, and what they don't know and what they're not being aware of as they're moving through this wacky world we all currently living in right now? And I won't
yeah,
bring
and,
politics comes to that, by the way. So.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Because
It's
like you said, we
More
might be on
important.
another 4 hours talking
right.
politics.
Right. So very interesting you raise that because we're seeing live now the generations of students who spent most of high school virtual, during COVID, and they entered a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to get the groups that were middle school to lower levels of high school were,
Mhm.
virtual and then came back for 2 years. And now we're trying to make that transition to the college kind of environment, and everybody's navigating it. It's
Yeah.
not just them, it's
Right.
not just the professors, it's like the whole system
Mhm.
is trying to sort out where do we get the most value of interacting in person,
Mhm.
interacting synchronously like this,
Mhm.
um, or what can we do asynchronously where people can learn at their own pace on their own timing
Right.
and have to be as effective. And that doesn't work the same way for everybody and for every kind of topic. I wanted to come back because I think it's relevant to this question.
Yes.
So what I do, yes, we talk about the Titanic effect. We talk about sources of uncertainty. I have my students in every either strategy or entrepreneurship class I teach. I have what I call a success or failure story. They go out and find a company that they think is cool. And then they have to dig into where did they pivot? What changes did they make? Did
Mhm.
they succeed or did they fail? And what can we all learn from that?
Wow.
And so they're going and they're identifying, holy cow, this is like that book, The Titanic Effect, where
Yeah. Yeah.
they get
Yeah.
one partner, a bunch of equity, and then
Yeah.
it owns them, right? Or
Right.
made a decision about their branding and, you know, decided that they were going to be a fuel additive. And then 2 years later, they realized that they were actually a nutraceutical that they wanted people to eat. Well, guess what? You had the same brand out there say you're going to put it in your car. Now
Yeah.
you're going to put it in your body? I don't think so.
Right. Right.
Gonna
Right. Right.
fool a
Yeah.
lot of people. So they're finding these stories, you know, going back to like Hydrox versus Oreos and Burt's Bees, but then
Mhm.
much more current. And they're finding all these stories and then finding these tidbits of like, wait, this is how it maps. So,
Mhm.
like, when they enter that journey of discovery, there's so much more bought in, I think, in terms of trying to figure out these concepts as opposed to you stand there and you show them a slide saying, here are the sources of human debt. You know, it's like, okay, how long are they actually going to, like, how deeply do they process and how long are they going to remember that? So, like,
Yeah.
that's part of the joy, I think, of being an educator of any type. And you are an educator, right?
Yeah. I teach.
You don't
I
have to
teach
be a
currently. Yeah.
professor.
Mhm.
Um, so, but like figuring out how to unlock that key of how are different groups going to be
Mhm.
able to process this and get some benefit from it. So,
And I'll tell you, one of our biggest messages to this next generation, they want to be entrepreneurs. They're very excited about
yeah.
being, but they do not like ambiguity. They want a formula. So it's like, that's not going to happen. And somewhere someone has, they watched Silicon Valley or something and, you know, the TV show, and they think, oh, I got to go raise, I gotta have a moonshot. I got to go come up with the biggest idea I can and raise a whole bunch of money. And then I can blast this thing out. And a lot of what we say is, hey, you know what? You don't need to do that. You could do this on paper. This could be a service. Start by seeing how you can have value to people that they're willing to pay for, and then go figure out what you need to build because you know what does and doesn't work,
Yeah.
rather than try to build something and then sell it.
Mhm. I mean, if it sounds like I'm kind of deflated now because you guys got me thinking back to my college self and the professors I had, and I'm a bit envious, to be honest with you. I kind of wish I was in a situation where I had professors like you all that came from a different world, didn't come from the typical professor teacher world where it's like, hey, I just want to give them a grade. I don't want to lose my job. I just want to make it so I am not fired, so I'm just going to give them whatever and give them an A or give them a B or a C, and all of a sudden I can keep the university president off my back. And too often do, you know, people there are, I'm sure you guys know, there are professors out there who are like that. It definitely is. It's not uncommon to see. And that kind of leads me to the next thing I want to talk to you. I want to be very respectful of you guys' time. Is you mentioned being angel investors, and I gotta ask for not only myself or anybody that's listening, when it comes to the companies or the people, because I know it's not just companies, it's people that you actually invest in. What were the qualities that they had in them that made you decide, okay, that's a yay, that's a nay? How did you evaluate anybody that came with you with something that they wanted you to at least look at or invest in?
So first, as you can imagine, that's a super complex question, and then
Yeah.
there are times that you know things kind of surprised us. But I think several important things that are kind of common hot buttons for us is
Hmm.
one, like, do we care about the problem they're solving? They could have the most promising SaaS marketing platform that's going to sell everybody a bunch of fancy, you know, more expensive sneakers and logo wear, and we're like, does that make the world a better place? That may sound corny, but like we want to
I
believe in
gotta,
the problem that's
that's
being
I
solved.
gotta pause you there because I want to make sure this doesn't get brushed over for the listeners. He started out saying it's a super complex problem, and then he immediately went to, I mean, a super complex question, and then he immediately went to, are you solving a problem? I don't know how better what I mean, listen, guys, he could have cut the answer right there. What problem are you fixing? what problem are you actually waking up every single morning disgusted with, and you have to solve it, and you'll do whatever it takes to solve that problem. That's how you get people believing in what you do. That's how you get people really buying into whatever it is you're trying to do, is you're fixing a damn problem. You're not starting a business. No one cares about how great your tax ID is. No one cares about how cool your logo is or your website is. They care about what actual problem are you solving, and do you care enough about it to where you will go the distance, you will talk about it regardless, and you wake up in your sleep wanting to fix that problem. So I'm glad it was such a natural answer, Todd, that I had to make sure every listener caught that you got to be fixing a problem every single day, and it has to be piercing at your heartstrings, pulling at it to the point where you just can't even sleep until the damn thing gets fixed. So, okay, go ahead. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
so a
about that.
corollary to that is we also don't invest in eyeball businesses, where, you're selling eyeballs.
You preaching
That
now.
is
You
not a
talking.
problem we're interested in solving or supporting.
Yes.
There might be money to be made there, but we're
Yeah.
just not going to make it that way.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
one thing. The second thing I think that you also pointed out too, and we sort of separate them in our minds and talk about them separately, is that the person themselves, we believe, have the stick-to-itiveness to deal with the problems they're going to have. There's going to be challenges. Most of the days suck. What are you going to do on the sucky days? Are you going to keep going? Or are you going to roll over? And so we like to see somebody, I can tell you one of the businesses we invested in, the guy wanted to get into the business school. It was really hard to get in the business school. He didn't get in. So we're like, so what did you do? And so he mapped out everything he did to get as close to the business school and get done and run his business on the side. And so we're like, okay, you took that hit, you
Yeah.
found a solution, you went over to that school and this school and put together a custom degree. Okay, we like where you're going. Now what?
Right. I mean, listen, I can talk about it for days, and there's so much of that around, and it doesn't take you being at some fancy school. It doesn't take you having some fancy job or anything like that. It just takes, what is it you're willing to put your life into? How hard are you willing to work? And then the right people are actually drawn to you. So I'm glad that you guys were able to re-emphasize that today for the listeners. And like I said, I do want to be very respectful of your time, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to just talk a little bit about what are the next plans. Like, how do you guys have accomplished so much in these decades when it comes to working with kids and creating opportunities and giving a ton of advice with publications and all that? What do you see as the next step towards your business and what you're going to be doing?
So I only tell you this, if you think starting a business is hard, try moving your household after you've been someplace for 27 years.
Yeah, that's what we didn't bring it up, but yeah, I was like Indiana, Buffalo. I wasn't sure how that happened. I was expecting to actually see the Indiana Hoosier pride and all that. But I'm like, the Buffalo, all right.
Well, our daughters live in Buffalo. They said they were coming back to Indiana. We went over and talked to the school of management here, and they said, we'd love to have your help. And we said, oh, well, okay, I guess we're going to have to move. And now we've been moving. We're like, wow, this was a wholly more difficult task than we thought it would be. But I can tell you that we're here now. We're settled in. We love our neighborhood. We found all the things that bring us joy. And so now what we're looking for, we sort of have a no risk pass. Like, we've accomplished as a lot. So whatever we do from here on out is icing on the cake. And so we're tackling healthcare.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So do the students that you had at Indiana, do they stay in touch with you and all that?
Yeah, yeah, they do. And to be clear, so a lot of what we do and a lot of what, universities are about is undergraduate teaching, but we've tended to teach older student populations. So not just undergrad, but for example, a physician MBA program where the average student is 46. We've taught healthcare professionals where the average is 32 to 33. And we really like working with folks that are practicing. They're actually taking the concepts and trying to implement them and seeing the problems, business problems firsthand. But as Kim said, at this stage, we're kind of looking toward kind of what's our legacy going to be to the extent that we have one. And we see so many challenges, so many great people in healthcare and health science related fields, including dentistry or occupational therapy and physical therapy, pharmacy, et cetera.
Dental.
Great individuals trapped in a system where it's really hard to be a successful innovator. And if we can kind of work at both levels a little bit with the systems and the healthcare providers, but then most importantly with those individuals who have that passion and desire, and also be training undergrad and graduate students to join the life science kind of industries and be successful in those markets. That's kind of our big thing looking forward over the next 10 years is to, try and make a little ding in that part of the universe, because, obviously it's such a huge and expensive problem for so many people, and there are so many good people in that system that aren't as effective as they would like to be and as we think they could be.
Yeah, my sister actually works at Kaiser.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah, so I now I have to ask, I guess, for her, is like what what are some of the issues that you are seeing and the current issues that you are seeing in healthcare?
so I think one project that we're working on right now that I'm really excited about is a community EHR, meaning that there's one health record for a whole population that's shared across all the different healthcare systems. So most markets have between 2 and 5 major healthcare players, and they're all
Yeah.
on different systems. So if we could get all the data together that can be shared so that we can identify where there are pockets of lack of access.
Ah, I got you. Yeah, yeah.
So if
That's
we,
important. Actually, one of the things actually too with being at Stony Brook is there's a hospital actually on campus. So even when we during games, we would see the ambulance right there. If guys go down, there was
right,
immediately that was actually a huge selling point. Our starting quarterback wanted to get into med school, and as a program and stuff like that. Those are things that are attracting the right people to your organization. So I'm not sure if you guys heard of Hofstra University.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, they cut the football program to build a med school when I was there, to build
nice.
a medical school. So it's you definitely, I'll tell you, haven't been there. You're definitely in the right area, and you're going to be talking like they really invest a great deal when it comes to the healthcare, especially in that area. So.
And we're working with the dean of the medical school and
Mhm.
her team to try and identify projects where business know-how can have a bigger impact and help them roll out some new ideas in a more effective manner. So we're really excited about having dual roles.
There it is, man. Came full circle from DC meeting with these consultants to now medical professionals and deans of healthcare. I mean, I you guys provide a great example of what life should be. So I'm thankful that we got to connect and we cross paths and all that. So before you go though, can you just tell people how they get in touch with you if they want to hear more, if they want to reach out? Where do you normally send people?
If you don't mind, just a quick interjection before that.
Yeah, go
We have had a great partnership,
ahead.
but we don't pretend, and those who know us know it
Mhm.
is not without challenges, right? I can be a pretty challenging individual,
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
So, like we from the outset, I think people, in fact, in our Christmas card last year, we sent something out just saying it's been a tough year. Here's some of the challenges, and people are like, man, you guys always seem like you got everything and you got everything nailed, and like, no, we
no.
don't. We have to work at it. We have to work at our relationship,
Exactly.
and any kind of innovative team that that's what you're all about. Like you're going to go through rough spots too, so persist through that. So sorry, I just want to make sure that your
And
audience
well,
did not
it
have
takes
this
me
like,
back to the one of my favorite books is Mindset by Carol Dweck, and she talks
Yeah.
about relationships where she doesn't say they lived happily ever after, they worked happily ever after. So willing to put in the work. It's going to be challenging times. It is not going to be easy by any means, which is why again, it's not for everybody. And your transparency, obviously the two of you that being as transparent as you are, it lets people know up front it isn't going to be easy. They're going to be rough times, and you got to be built for it. You can't expect everything every day to just run smoothly. It just isn't going to happen. That's just the reality of the situation. So,
yep, thank you.
Yes, but in terms of finding us, you can go to www.titaniceffect.com, and people email us from the website all the time, and we have interesting relationships with the folks that reach out that way. But also at the University of Buffalo, I mean, we're some of the only Saxtons, so you can go to the University of Buffalo faculty directory, and you'll find us pretty quickly.
all right. So the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Just Pretend you guys are transitioning from consulting to getting into academia. You have your first newborn. Pretend that that version of Todd and Kim has come into the Zoom room. Give that young couple some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Yeah, never stop working.
That's it.
And I'll say, never stop learning, right? And just because you become a teacher, you become a mentor, you become older, in our case, a good bit older, like just keep learning. I mean, that's what keeps it fresh, and you're going to be better at everything you do, but also better at those roles of mentor, et cetera. So we're fortunate in having been able to continue to learn along with everybody that we work with, teach, and work for. So.
That's it, period. Continue to work and continue to learn. I have absolutely nothing else to add to that. All right. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.